yourself a friend. Lay down your defenses and fears. You're welcome here. Yes, you're welcome here. Yes, you're welcome here.
Good afternoon. I'm Reverend Dave Thompson, and I'm excited to bring you back to our Civil Human Bible study today. So I'm a civil human minister, and what that means is that I focus my ministry or my service on building human peace and common ground. And it's in that endeavor that I'm actually looking at my own spiritual heritage to try to look for those teachings in the teachings of Jesus that I feel are applicable across the board to all people, regardless of our different faiths, regardless of our different politics and our different lifestyles. So that's my intention, and I would love it if you would join me. Let's go ahead and jump into Matthew chapter 24, verses 21 through 31. Starting with verse 21. For then there will be great tribulation, such as not been seen since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor even shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake those days will be shortened. Then if anyone says to you, look, here's the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he's in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he's in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its lights. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four corners of the winds, from one end of heaven to the other. That is quite a lot to cover, right? It's a great deal of confusing language, and I have to be honest, this particular verse was a bit tricky for me. I have spent a number of years, my whole life really, since adolescence, trying to figure out what the scriptures are about. And in my particular background, evangelical conservative faith, the end times and Jesus's returns and the Antichrist and all of that were a big part of the conversation for us because we were expecting it to happen. As you may remember, there was a book that came out in 1988, or it was 89, one of the two. It says 88 Reasons Why Christ is Coming Back in 88, but it might have been 89. I can't recall, but it was an interesting book. And those of us who are in the evangelical world are fascinated by it, and everybody has made these predictions about when Jesus is coming, when the rapture, which is where Jesus is going to take everybody away who follows after the teachings of Jesus. We've all had the speculation, and we've watched some great horror classics like The Omen and renditions of the whole story by American Dad. So this has become part of a almost larger mythology. And so what I'd like to do is to walk through this passage and to sort of help explain what's going on right now and how this really fits into the overall conversation of Jesus. And last, how in the world we can apply it to us here, today, right now, in our modern century. So let's go ahead and walk through the passage a little bit. There are a couple of things that I want to highlight. And this is our End Times series in part 4 in it. So first we see Jesus saying there's going to be a great tribulation such as never been seen before or will ever be seen again. What is tribulation? We talked about this yesterday, but it's a word that essentially means pressured. And it borrows from this idea of walking through a corridor and the corridor getting smaller and smaller and smaller so that it's much more difficult to get through to where one's going. So the idea is that life is going to be very difficult, not only just for one person, but for everybody altogether. The second thing is that he's going to say as a result of this, and also as a result of the end of the world and kind of what's going to be happening, they're going to be false kings and false prophets. Literally, it says false Christs, which in this Greek language, the word Christ is, it's not Jesus' last name, right? It's not Jesus, the son of the family of Christ. It's Jesus Christ, meaning the king. It literally means anointed one, which in their culture meant when a king was decided on, they would anoint him with oil. And so Jesus, the Christ, or the anointed one, or the king. But essentially it's this, that there's going to be false kings that show up. And then he goes on to add that there's going to be false prophets. And prophets are the people who stand up in front of our society and who tell us what we should focus on, right? They try to keep us on the moral path. They try to keep us in a place where we are paying attention to what's happening around us and making good moral decisions, at least hopefully, right? And this is one of the most important parts that I want to talk about. And I want to get there at the end of this conversation because I want to walk through really some of the conversation about the end of the world. And then I really want to hit this conversation, the whole false prophets and false kings conversation, because I really do think that has room for conversation in our world right here and now. So the next step is that Jesus talks about the sun going dark, the moon no longer gives its light, obviously because the sun doesn't have any more light either. So the moon reflects it to us, right? So there's no light. The stars are going to fall out of the sky. The heavens are going to be shaken. And this cataclysmic event. Who in the world knows what's going to be happening? I have no idea. Was Jesus speaking about a particular event that was going to happen in the future? Is it like a prophecy, a foretelling? I don't know. We don't really know why Jesus tells us this, but his whole indicator is that it's going to be the end of the world as we know it. Now, for those of us who are concerned about the progress of Earth and the progress of our ecosystem and our climate, as we look at it in the development, as we continue down that road, who knows if it's going to be another ice age, if it's going to be the destruction of our planet. And for that matter, who knows when an asteroid might come through our solar system and just completely devastate everything that we are. We really are a fragile existence in this universe. We forget about it because we're protected on Earth and we keep our eyes towards the ground. But really, if you go out at night and look at all the stars out there, it is enormous and we don't know what is going to happen in the future necessarily. So anyway, Jesus then says that then you're going to see the Son of Man, then the sign of the Son of Man in the sky, and it's flashing from east to west. Essentially, that means it's going to cover the whole globe. It's going to be known by everybody at the time when Jesus arrives, and then he's going to send his messengers to gather all the people who, for whatever reason, are the ones that he's chosen, the elect. So what in the world does that mean? And how does it have any application whatsoever to today? I want to discuss this now as we're kind of closing into the place of conversing about our application today. First, I want to talk about what I don't know. As a civil human minister, one of my platforms is that I will be honest about what I can observe and what I cannot observe. What I can observe are the words that are told to me here. What I cannot observe is what's going to happen, or if these have already been fulfilled, or if these are hyperbole or metaphor, or if in fact these happen to be somehow a foretelling of what's to come down the future. That's what I don't know. And it's left up to speculation. The second thing is what I do know. And that is that even here and now, the idea of Jesus providing us warnings of false prophets and false kings is something that is applicable to us right here and right now. One of the most difficult things, I think, in our society is deciding who the good kings are and who the bad ones are. We in a democracy, we have a president that we elect, we vote for as a representation of our society in the US. At least hopefully that's why, that's what it's built to do. But deciding who that person is going to be is incredibly difficult, because in our day and age, we have this new medium called social media, and anybody in the world who has $10 can force you to see information that you don't want to see, even as much as you choose not to. For instance, on Facebook, I can put a advertisement together that is completely false, completely misleading and inaccurate. As long as I pay my money, everybody that I choose to see it will see it. This is a situation that has never existed in the history of humanity. We've never had to come into terms with something that is so in front of our face. It used to be, free speech was out there, but you didn't have free speech in front of certain people who disagreed with you, because you might get knocked in the snout, right? I mean, this is the reality of the way we used to live. And now information is thrown at us in droves, and we're almost drowning in it. And so it's even more difficult for us to make a good decision about who should be our leader. I want to hearken back to the words of Jesus on this point, to note that we look at the fruits, to see whether those fruits, what are the outcomes of their leadership? Are they peace? Are they humility? Is it compassion for those who are suffering in our society? Is it peacemaking? Or is it division? Or is it anger? Is it berating each other? These are the ways that we discern what good leadership is. And I know I've talked about this a little bit, but the second thing I want to talk about are the false prophets. This is something that's applicable to us today, because we do have false prophets. We do have false ministers and false pastors and false rabbis and people who are looking to take advantage of it. Now, there are some who don't realize that they're taking advantage of it. They've convinced themselves that the system they built just happens to bring them luxury, and that that's okay, and that's actually a blessing from God. Whether they want to acknowledge it or not, they are creating a system that is creating suffering and working off of the suffering of others in order to live in luxury, and that's not right. Those are some of the things that we're going to have to deal with as we move forward as a world in this, I would say, tribulation that we're facing right now, this great pressure for us to figure out how we're going to live together in peace. The last I want to talk about is the second coming of Christ. Is it going to happen? I don't know. There's no way for me to prove it. There's no way for me to show you anything that's going to designate yes or no. Are there claims made that he is? Yes. Does it seem that he actually claims he's coming back? Yeah, it does. What is that going to look like? I don't know. But here's some speculation, just for fun, right? I'm going to borrow a little bit from sci-fi. I love Star Trek. It's okay. I admit about it, and I will come out as a geek in my show. The reality is we have no problem looking at Star Trek First Contact and seeing the Vulcans showing up on our planet and extending a hand of peace or long and prosper to us in order to introduce themselves to us, because we've advanced far enough along that we're going to become more of a danger to the universe than we ever have. And so they come on board, they help us develop into the next stage of our existence in our life. Why in the world can't that be the way that this more advanced being out there operates? This is entirely speculation, of course. But I want to make sure that we provide room for this conversation, for this possibility that there might be life out there besides us. The fact that we exist is enough to show the probability of it. and demonstrate that life is possible out of the chaos of this universe. So why not another life that's been lived longer before? Was Christ part of this? Was Jesus part of this? I don't know. There's, again, no way for me to prove it except to show you that these things exist here and they've been claimed. What does that mean for us here and now? Well, it really doesn't mean a significant amount, honestly, except to note that this advanced being is all about creating peace, that this advanced way of living in our universe is about finding the best solutions for everybody, is about ending suffering, is about not living in the world of nature and succumbing to our primal ideas and our primal needs, but it's setting a society up that's better and creates a better world than we have before. It's been an interesting section this time, this study. It's a bit difficult to come up with how in the world this applies today. Honestly, I had to think about that quite a bit because, this is magical in many ways. The sun burning out, the moon no longer showing, the stars falling out. It's pretty hard for me to wrap my head around, right? Because we've never seen that before. Does that mean it's not going to happen? No, it doesn't. Does it mean that it will happen? I don't know. But what I can point out, and I really do believe this, that paying attention to people who claim one thing and do another is important. Paying attention to leaders, whether they are spiritual, political, or social, and making sure that they are doing what they say they want to do, that they're not hypocrites, and that they're not living a life of luxury off of the suffering of others. That is a human message, and that's what I walk away with when I'm reading this. Thank you so much for being with me in this Bible study. I would love it if you would add your comments. If you have thoughts or concerns, or you want to completely disagree with me, would love it. Please keep those comments in the comments below the video. Would love it if you would like the Facebook page. And if you're on YouTube, there's a little button down here that you can click to subscribe. And until tomorrow, live at noon, I want you to know that I love you. I do. And I hope you choose to love yourself. It's the only love in this world that we have any control over. And now I would invite you to join me as we go about the rest of our day, loving those around us the same way. Thank you.